Heathcliff, make the world stop right here. Make everything stop and stand still and never move again.
In the golden age of Hollywood, when glamour was carefully manufactured and every star was polished into perfection, few stories are as haunting, complex, and deliberately hidden as that of Merle Oberon. To the world, she was elegance personified, a luminous presence on screen, unforgettable in films like Wuthering Heights, where her beauty and poise captivated audiences and secured her place among the elite of classic cinema. But behind the soft lighting, the carefully constructed image, and the adoration of millions, there existed a truth so deeply buried that even those closest to her were kept in the dark. This is not just a story about fame. It is a story about identity, secrecy, and the extraordinary lengths one woman went to in order to survive in an industry that demanded perfection but punished difference at a time when Hollywood operated under rigid and often discriminatory standards, where race and background could determine the trajectory of a career. Merle Oberon's life became a carefully orchestrated performance off-screen as much as on it. Born far from the glamorous streets of Los Angeles, her early life was marked by circumstances that did not fit the image Hollywood wanted to sell. There were whispers, fragments of truth that hinted at her that studios feared would not be accepted by audiences of the time. And so, a narrative was constructed, one that erased parts of her identity, reshaped her history, and presented her to the world as something more acceptable. It was not merely a reinvention. It was a complete transformation, one that required constant vigilance and silence that as her career rose, so did the pressure to maintain this illusion. Studio executives, publicists, and insiders all played their roles in preserving the carefully crafted story. Interviews were controlled, details were altered, and questions were deflected. Even her closest relationships were built on partial truths, creating a life where authenticity was a luxury she could not afford. Imagine the weight of living under such scrutiny, where a single revelation could unravel everything. Her career, her reputation, her place in an industry that had no tolerance for deviation from its narrow standards. This was the invisible burden Merle Oberon carried, a secret that followed her from set to set, from premiere to premiere, hidden behind the dazzling smile that audiences adored. Her success in films like The Dark Angel, which earned her an Academy Award nomination, only intensified the stakes. With fame came increased attention, and with attention came risk. Every photograph, every public appearance, every interaction became part of a larger performance designed to protect a truth that could not be spoken. The irony is striking. A woman celebrated for her ability to portray characters on screen was forced to play her most demanding role in real life, a role with no script, no director, and no room for error. But the secrecy surrounding Merle Oberon was not just about personal survival. It was a reflection of the broader culture of Hollywood at the time. The industry thrived on illusion, on the creation of idealized images that often bore little resemblance to reality. In this world, authenticity was secondary to marketability, and those who did not fit the mold were either reshaped or excluded. Merle Oberon's story exposes a truth behind the glamour, a system that demanded conformity at any cost, even if it meant erasing parts of one's identity. Her silence was not weakness. It was a way to navigate an environment that offered limited and even fewer protections today as the years passed. The secret remained intact, guarded with extraordinary care. It was only after her passing that the full scope of her story began to emerge, revealing a narrative far more complex and compelling than the one Hollywood had presented. The revelation shocked many, not just because of what had been hidden, but because of how successfully it had been concealed for so long. It forced a re-evaluation of her legacy, prompting audiences and historians alike to look beyond the surface and to consider that shaped her life and choices. What makes this story so powerful is not just the secrecy, but the resilience it represents. Merle Oberon navigated a world that was not designed for someone like her to succeed, and yet she did, brilliantly, gracefully, and on her own terms, even if those terms were constrained by the realities of her time. Her journey is a testament to the human capacity for adaptation, for strength in the face of adversity, and for maintaining dignity even when forced to live her. Today, her story resonates in new ways, shedding light on the importance of representation, authenticity, and the courage to embrace one's identity. It also serves as a reminder of how far the industry has come, and how far it still has to go. The secrets that once had to be hidden are now part of a larger conversation about inclusion and truth, giving voices to those who were once silenced that in the end. The story of Merle Oberon is not just about what was hidden. It is about why it had to be hidden, and what that reveals about the world she lived in. It is a story that challenges the myths of Hollywood's golden age, exposing complexities behind the glamour and reminding us that every legend has layers, some of which remain unseen until long after the spotlight fades. And as we look back on her life, we are left with a deeper understanding of the cost of fame, the power of resilience, and the enduring truth that sometimes the most compelling stories are the ones that were never meant to be told as the curtain of secrecy slowly began to lift. The deeper layers of Merle Oberon's life revealed a narrative far more profound than anyone could have imagined, a story not just of hidden identity, but of calculated survival in an industry built on illusion. The truth, long buried beneath studio-crafted biographies and carefully staged appearances, pointed back to her origins in British India, a background that, in the rigid and often prejudiced system of early Hollywood, could have ended her career before it even began. At a time when racial boundaries were strictly enforced and opportunities were limited for those who did not fit a narrow definition of acceptable, Merle Oberon's existence in the spotlight became a delicate balancing act between visibility and concealment. Every step she took deeper into fame required greater control over her narrative. Publicists worked tirelessly to reshape her past, inventing stories that aligned with the expectations of Western audiences. Photographs were retouched to soften features, lighting was manipulated to present a particular image, and interviews were orchestrated with precision. Even her accent, her mannerisms, and the way she carried herself were part of a carefully constructed persona designed to reinforce the illusion. It was not just a career, it was an ongoing performance where the stakes were her entire livelihood. Her success, particularly after starring in Wuthering Heights, placed her among Hollywood elite, yet it also tightened the constraints around her. The more famous she became, the more dangerous the truth became. Journalists began to ask questions. Inconsistencies in her story occasionally surfaced, and whispers circulated among those who suspected there was more beneath the surface. But in an era where studios held immense power, such whispers were often silenced before they could gain traction. Contracts, influence, and reputation management ensured that the illusion remained intact, allowing Merle Oberon to continue her ascent while keeping her secret. Yet, beneath this carefully maintained facade, there existed a personal reality filled with tension and relationships were complicated by the need for secrecy. Trust was difficult to establish, and the fear of exposure was ever present. Imagine living in a world where even the simplest conversation could become a threat, where a misplaced word or an unexpected question could unravel years of carefully constructed identity. This constant vigilance was the unseen cost of her success, a burden carried quietly behind the elegance and grace that audiences admired. The tragedy of her story lies not in the fact that she concealed her origins, but in the circumstances that made such concealment necessary. Hollywood, during its golden age, was not a place that celebrated diversity. It was a system that enforced conformity, often at the expense of authenticity. Merle Oberon's decision to hide parts of herself was not born out of shame, but out of necessity in a world that offered limited space for those who did not fit its rigid ideals. Her story exposes the uncomfortable truth that behind the glamour of classic cinema lay a culture of exclusion, where talent alone was not always enough to secure acceptance. That as time moved forward and societal attitude began to shift, the significance of her hidden identity took on new meaning. What was once a secret guarded out of became a powerful symbol of resilience and complexity. Historians and biographers revisited her life, uncovering details that had been deliberately obscured, and re-examining her legacy through a more inclusive lens. This re-evaluation did not diminish her achievements. Rather, it added depth to them, highlighting the extraordinary strength required to navigate such a challenging environment while maintaining a successful career. Her performances in films like The Dark Angel gained new resonance when viewed in the context of her personal journey. Though she conveyed on screen longing, conflict, vulnerability, seemed to reflect aspects of her own life, whether consciously or not. It is as if the role she played became an outlet for truth she could not express openly, allowing her to channel her experiences into her art in ways that audiences could feel, even if they did not fully understand why. Even today, the story of Merle Oberon continues to captivate, not because of scandal, but because of its humanity. It challenges us to reconsider how we define identity, how we understand success, and how we acknowledge the sacrifices made by those who came before us. Her life serves as a reminder that the path to recognition is not always straightforward, and that behind every celebrated figure lies a story that may be far more complex than it appears. That in revisiting her journey, we are confronted with a powerful question: How many other stories like hers have been hidden, altered, or forgotten in the pursuit of acceptance? The answer is likely more than we realize, making her story not just a singular narrative, but part of a broader history of voices that were reshaped to fit a mold. By bringing her truth to light, we honor not only her legacy but also the countless others who navigated similar challenges in silence. And so, the legacy of Merle Oberon stands as both a triumph and a revelation, a testament to talent, resilience, and of self-preservation in the face of systemic. It is a story that transforms our understanding of Hollywood's golden age, reminding us that behind the brilliance of the screen lies a world of untold truths, waiting to be discovered, understood, and finally acknowledged that as the full scope of Merle Oberon's life continues to come into focus, one cannot ignore the profound personal cost of maintaining such a carefully curated image. Fame, after all, was a double-edged sword. It provided recognition, wealth, and influence, but it also imposed relentless pressure to conform, to conceal, and to perform not only for the cameras but for society that judged harshly those who did not fit its rigid expectations. Every public appearance, every photograph, every interview was a calculated decision, a layer of armor built to protect her private truth from prying eyes. Yet this armor came at the expense of personal freedom, a constant negotiation between who she truly was and who the world expected her to be. Her personal relationships reveal another dimension of this struggle. Friendships and romances were colored by secrecy. Trust became a precious and rare commodity, because revealing too much could be disastrous. Loved ones often saw only fragments of her life, and even those closest to her were sometimes kept at a distance, deliberately, to shield them from potential scandal. The very qualities that made her alluring and brilliant on screen, her charm, poise, and elegance, were also tools of survival, a means to navigate a world that demanded constant vigilance. Every smile, every graceful gesture was imbued with careful intention, masking the inner tension of a woman walking a tightrope between authenticity and necessity. The broader context of Hollywood's studio system during her era only amplifies the significance of her story. Actors were essentially commodities, bound by contract that restricted autonomy and dictated the narrative presented to the public. Studios controlled not only their work but their very identity, often dictating details of their personal histories, relationships, and appearances. Merle Oberon's situation was extreme, yet emblematic of a larger pattern in which power dynamics shape careers in ways the audience would never see. What makes her story compelling is the intersection of extraordinary talent and extraordinary circumstance, the way one individual navigated an environment that was as ruthless as it was glamorous. Her films themselves offer subtle glimpses into the tension she carried. On screen, she often portrayed women who faced societal judgment, personal struggle, or hidden truths. In hindsight, these roles can be seen as reflections of her own life, moments where art mirrored reality, and performance became a conduit for unspoken emotion. The intensity, nuance, and vulnerability she brought to her work suggest a depth forged by experience, a sophistication that went far beyond technique alone. Her brilliance was inseparable from the life she led off-screen, revealing the ways in which personal reality can inform artistic expression in ways both visible and invisible. The revelation of her hidden origins reshaped not only our understanding of her life, but also the way historians view Hollywood's treatment of race, identity, and representation. It highlights the extraordinary lengths to which studios went to construct narratives that would appeal to audiences while suppressing truths that could provoke prejudice or controversy. Her story is a reminder that for every glamorous figure celebrated on screen, there may be a hidden narrative of sacrifice, strategy, and resilience crafted not out of desire for fame, but necessity. Merle Oberon's journey also raises broader questions about authenticity and the price. Of visibility. How many others in Hollywood's history had to suppress part of themselves to fit the narrow expectations of an audience or the demands of an industry? Her story challenges us to rethink what success truly means. Not only the accolades and recognition, but also the personal cost of achieving it in an environment that rarely rewarded authenticity. It forces a confrontation with the ways systemic pressures can shape lives, careers, and legacies, and the courage required to navigate them. Even in her later years, long after the spotlight had faded, the weight of these early choices remained. Public perception continued to shape the narrative of her life, even as she aged and attempted to reclaim aspects of her own story. Interviews, biographies, and retrospectives piece together fragments of her reality, but it is the gaps between the lines, the secret she guarded, the truth she could not openly share, that make her story so compelling. It is within those silences of the most profound insights emerge, illuminating both the constraints of the time and the remarkable resilience that allowed her to thrive despite them. Ultimately, the story of Merle Oberon is not merely about hidden origins or Hollywood intrigue. It is about the enduring strength of an individual navigating a world structured against her, the strategic brilliance required to maintain both career and self-preservation, and the courage to rise above systemic limitations while leaving an indelible mark on cinema. Her life reminds us that behind every carefully curated image, there may lie layers of untold struggle, resilience, and complexity, truths that, when revealed, deepen our understanding not only of one extraordinary woman but of the culture and history she inhabited today. As we delve even deeper into the hidden layers of Merle Oberon's life, the extent of her struggle, and the meticulous strategy she employed to navigate it, becomes increasingly clear. Every aspect of her existence was a careful balancing act, a negotiation between visibility and invisibility, truth and fiction. While the world saw only the glimmering surface, perfect hair, flawless makeup, elegant gowns, the reality was far more complex. A life constantly managed under pressure, with every word, gesture, and appearance calculated to protect a secret that could have destroyed her career. In an era when Hollywood demanded conformity and punished difference, she became a master of survival, wielding discretion and poise as her most powerful tools. Her early years were fraught with challenges few could have anticipated. Born in a world that did not easily accommodate her background, she faced a society both fascinated by her beauty and deeply skeptical of her origins. This duality shaped her entire career. She was both celebrated and scrutinized, desired yet constrained, admired yet constrained by the prejudices of the time. Studios capitalized on her image while carefully suppressing the details of her heritage, transforming her past into a sanitized narrative that could be comfortably consumed by Western audiences. This deliberate erasure was not merely about maintaining a career. It was about survival in a system that left little room for deviation. The very mechanics of Hollywood during her ascent revealed just how extraordinary her navigation of this world truly was. Contractual obligations, studio interference, and rigid public relations campaigns ensured that every aspect of an actor's public persona could be monitored and controlled. For Merle Oberon, this meant that even intimate personal choices, relationships, friendships, daily routines, were subject to scrutiny and potential manipulation. She became a performer in every sense, acting not only for the camera but for the gaze of an industry that could make or break her based on perception alone. Yet within this environment, she managed to cultivate a career defined not just by survival, but by exceptional artistry. The tension between her private reality and public persona was mirrored in the roles she chose, or was allowed to play. Films like Wuthering Heights and The Dark Angel showcased characters who often embodied conflict, secrecy, and forbidden longing, providing an uncanny resonance with Oberon's own life. Critics and audiences responded to the emotional depth she brought to these performances, though few could guess at the personal experiences informing them. In hindsight, one can see a subtle thread linking the role she inhabited on screen with the complexities of a lived experience. The negotiation of identity, the concealment of truth, and the quiet strength required to endure a world that demanded perfection without understanding. The personal cost of maintaining this dual existence cannot be overstated. Friendships and romantic relationships were navigated with extreme care. Trust was rationed, vulnerability restricted. The fear of exposure created a constant, low-level anxiety, as even the most innocuous interactions had the potential to unravel carefully maintained illusions. Family, friends, and colleagues were only partially admitted into a private world,